Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar. It's on a topic that I'm really passionate about and really excited to share with you. Uh, One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it is because here at Bill Good Marketing, we actually define the word marketing as the total of all communications directed at a target audience intended to create a certain perception or a specific perception of a product, company, or person. And in today's webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to give you an inside look at the total of all the written communications that one advisor has used to grow his business and become one of the highest producers at his broker dealer. And we'll explain why his particular communication strategy is so effective at creating certain perceptions in the minds of clients and prospects that enable him to stand out from his competitors, build trust with clients, and always be top of mind with his prospects. And I think it's a really cool strategy and a really cool topic, and I can't wait to dive into it today with you. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name's Matthew Bailey. I'm the head writer and the director of content here at Bill Good Marketing. But I'm not the one you came here to listen to today. That's my two outstanding guests that I have with me. The first one is the advisor that I mentioned, Joe Garrett, who is a longtime subscriber to the Bill Good Marketing system and one of our absolute favorite clients to work with here at Bill Good Marketing. So, Joe, please take a minute to tell us a bit about yourself, your business, your background, and let us get a sense of who you are.
Well, Matt, first of all, thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that, and I'm very excited about the call today. I've This is my 25th year in the business. I started back in 1999 with Edward Jones, and in 2004 I left Edward Jones to go independent and form my own firm. And I partnered with LPL as my broker dealer back in 2004. And just recently, I celebrated my 20th year with LPL. And we are a office of, there are two other advisors, and we are now adding a third advisor who will be on board any day now as an official advisor. And we have also a couple of admin support people and a lot of things that we do outsource too. So our team is really bigger than it appears to be. We are in a small town. We're a suburb of Atlanta, probably about an hour, depending on what traffic's like, an hour and a half from downtown Atlanta. But our town is still that small town atmosphere, almost a Mayberry like atmosphere in the South of where I live. It's still the same. It's the kind of place where you go into restaurants, you go into grocery stores, and you're going to see 10 people. It still has that feel where we are. And Matt, we've just really have built a business through the years. I like to say, we do work with business owners and other types of things associated with that, some nonprofit stuff. But the bulk of our business, I still say, it's the mom and pops. It really is. It's the retired clients, the pre-retiree clients, and it's what we built through the years.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joe.
Thank you.
We're also really lucky to be joined by none other than the man we refer to as the head gorilla, our founder, Bill Good himself. Bill, for those watching today who have never had the chance to speak with you yet, and I know we have a lot of new people on the call today, please introduce yourself and the system that you created.
Well, I've self-appointed myself as the head gorilla, and that goes back to at least 2002 because I have a Yahoo email account, and it's headgorilla2002 at yahoo.com. So it's been around long enough to now be official. And the gorilla, of course, is the trademark of Bill Good Marketing. And I picked that sometime in the, early 90s. Why? Because a gorilla is a big, powerful presence. And that's what I wanted to communicate. We are a big, powerful company, and we help people become, like Joe, big, powerful financial advisors. Our mission was and is to help you double production or work half as much. And to do that, I created what I immodestly named the Bill Good Marketing System. And it is a CRM based client marketing, prospecting, and practice management system. And that's all I need to say about it right now, because we're going to get into one of my best students, Joe Garrett.
Absolutely. Now, before we dive into the topic, just a couple notes of housekeeping really quick. First of all, if you are new to these webinars, we want you to know that we love your questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll definitely answer them as we can. And then also, if you're new to these webinars, one thing we always like to do as a way of saying thank you for giving us an hour of your time is to give you a special goodie bag at the end of this call. And this contains various resources that you can use to apply to your own business right now. Today's goodie bag, I think, is really, really cool. It contains two different items. The first item is a guidebook that we wrote called Client Marketing the Good Way. And this contains some of the most important best practices that any advisor can do and that all advisors on our system do in order to maximize their client retention and boost their client engagement. And you're going to find a lot of really powerful insights in that guidebook on how to just do just that. And we also have another item today. One of the things that Joe's going to talk about are the communications he sends out to his clients and prospects that help him demonstrate his expertise, his financial knowledge, and helps him build confidence in the minds of his clients in their own financial future. We've actually included one of those communications in the goodie bag. This is the new piece of content that we just came out with last week here at Bill Good Marketing on the recent Fed rate cut. We've already gotten a lot of wonderful feedback and success stories from advisors using this letter. So we wanted to make sure you had access to it as well, and you can use this and send it out to whoever you like. And I'll show you how to get that goodie bag. If you stay to the end of this webinar, we'll give you a link to that, and those goodies will be yours. Okay, so let's get into the topic proper. Before we dive into Joe's specific communication strategy, though, I think we first need to explain why it matters in the first place. And the reason why it matters is, as you'll see, it helps build what we call the trusted advisor relationship between Joe and more clients and prospects. Now, Bill, I know all the way back in the 1980s, you did a study to determine what made someone an A client for an advisor. And you realized that it wasn't always just about a person's wealth. It was about which clients were the most responsive, which clients would always do what their advisor told them to do and would make their advisor their sole advisor. In other words, I think you realize that the most lucrative and productive relationships an advisor can have are with those who truly trust their advisor. And the more such relationships an advisor has, the more they'll grow their business. So what I'd like for you to do today is talk about what you've called the trusted advisor relationship and what the trusted advisor relationship is and why it matters. So Bill, tell us a bit more about what this is and what it means.
All right. The origin of this is the original research I did before I launched the Bill Good Marketing System in December 1986. That's like, I think that was just after Noah's flood. That's how long we've had this. And part of my research was visiting with a lot of what were then called account executives. And they explained to me how they had an A, B, C, and sometimes a D book. And I remember distinctly sitting down with this one chap, and I went through his A book, and I would ask him, why is this person in there? Well, he's got a lot of money. And but this next person, they don't have very much. Why is she in the book? Because she always does what I tell her to do. And I realized that filing system was trying to compress two different functions in the same book. So I separated the relationship management from the size of the wealth that they managed. We had a field in that very first copy of our system called book A, B, C, D. An A client was someone who did what the advisor said when they said to do it. Wealth index of 1 was somebody in whatever your top 5% is. And depending on where you are, that could be $2 million in Palm Springs or $200,000 in a poor section of Utah. So I became fascinated with the fact that the people who developed a lot of A clients, regardless of how big they are, tended to be the biggest. And they tended to have the most fun.
Right.
Because they had gotten to the point they didn't have to sell. When you have a clientele made up of people who regard you as a trusted advisor, you're not selling anymore. You don't call someone up and say, Bob, here's what I think we should do. You just tell them what we should do. You don't have to sell them on it. Because just like when they go to the doctor and the doctor says, take 2 of these every 4 hours, they don't say, now hang on, I'm going to check my physician's Dex reference here. I'm going to find out if that is actually the correct analysis. They do it. Why? Because they have granted trusted advisor status to their doctor, to their dentist, to their accountant, and possibly to their contractor, their car repair. People need lots of trusted advisors today. And so I began very early to focus on how do we create that relationship, not just let it happen, but how do we create it? And that led to the definition you see on the screen. So a trusted advisor is one held in such high esteem that the clients will do what the advisor recommends with full belief the advisor is acting in their best interest. That's what you want to develop. That's what makes any business rewarding.
I love that. And I think what you said, Bill, about we don't just wait for it to happen or hope it'll happen. We go out and we create it. And I think, one of the things that you did is you discovered that there are 3 specific identities or pillars that you need to build in order to create that trusted advisor relationship. And it always reminds me of a quote that you once shared with me by an author who wrote that marketing isn't about products, marketing is about perceptions. So in order to create that trusted advisor relationship or have that trusted advisor status, clients must perceive of you in a certain way. So I was hoping you could talk to us about those 3 identities or pillars that go into building that trusted advisor relationship. So why don't you take us through this, Bill, one by one, and then we're going to tie this in to Joe's communication strategy.
Now, I really developed these 3 pillars doing a series of mental experiments. There's no study that I have ever seen that proves what I'm going to tell you is true. You just have to take a look at your own professional advisors and verify that this makes sense to you. So the first thing that you would look for in selecting someone to be an advisor is, are they an expert in their field? And in this field, are you an expert financial advisor? If you're just a good golfing buddy, you can have a certain percentage of someone's portfolio, but will you get it all? Probably not. So what we want to first establish is the expert financial advisor perception. And Joe is actually going to show us some different ways that he does that. Because what we're building, folks, is actually a brand. You are branding yourself as expert financial advisor. There are many tools to do it. Joe is going to cover some important ones. Now, but let's pose this question. Here's it, and this is one of those experiments. Is the expert financial advisor perception enough for someone to grant you trusted advisor status? What if you are an expert and a jerk? Do you ever make it to trusted advisor status? And I'm going to give you an example from my business. A good while ago, we got an unpleasant letter from the Utah State tax people, and they advised us that they had reconsidered the deal we had worked out, and they were going to tax everything in the Bill Good marketing system, not just the software, as an item for sale. And here's where you can send your check for $500,000. And you want to talk about pumping the air out of the room? That did. Now, I hunted far and wide to find the person that I believe to be the best expert on Utah state tax in the country. And we had a hearing at the Utah State Tax. My accountant was there, I was there, he was there. And at the end of it, they determined, no, you don't owe us any money. That tax attorney that I hired was like a gunslinger. He was one of the most unpleasant people that I've ever had to deal with. And when we got that word that we didn't owe him anything, I never went back to him. I never called him again. He was never a candidate for trusted advisor because he was a jerk, very unpleasant to be around. So that led me to the conclusion that you need to develop another brand, which is that you are a trustworthy, caring, well-mannered individual. Who you are matters in determining what you are. All right. So what does that mean? These are things that are mostly established initially in person. They see you, they talk to you, they like the way you dealt with them, they like the way you treated their family, blah, blah, blah. They like the fact that when you set an appointment, you kept it. If you told them you were going to call them on a certain day, you did that. And that builds the trustworthy brand in ways that most people don't even think about. So I then posed a question to myself. This is my mental experiment. Let's assume that you are an expert financial advisor. You are a trustworthy, caring, well-mannered individual. Is that enough? And I posed a question: what if there's an article in the paper, Joe, and you're little newspaper you write for, and you can talk about that in a minute, announcing Joe Garrett has been arrested for a DUI. The expert financial advisor and the trustworthy, caring, well-mannered individual, they don't matter anymore, do they? That whole thing just went down because you were not a good citizen. So the moral of that story is you have to be and be perceived as a good citizen. And there are ways to communicate that. If you don't communicate it, it didn't happen. But what seems to happen, and you can, again, you'll have to verify this for yourself, is at a point, someone will call you up and say, hey, Joe, I've got this other 401k from 2 employers ago. It's sitting over at Edward Jones. I want to bring it over to you. And Joe, I know that's happened to you. And when that happens, that person is telling you they just moved a lot closer or maybe crossed the line, and you are now their trusted advisor, and they don't need 2 financial advisors in the trusted advisor category any more than they need 2 dentists. You're going to go to the dentist, and you're going to say, okay, now you're going to do the left side, and then you go to another dentist, you get the right side. No, that's ridiculous. So these are the pillars to become a trusted advisor. Now, there may be some people who never cross that line. You know, some people have argued that engineers don't make the cut. Well, we'll see. But that's what I've done, Matt.
That's great, Bill. Thank you. And Joe, I want to pose a question for you on this. You know, you mentioned when you introduced yourself that you live in a town where, you know, you go to the grocery store and you run into 10 people, you know, that you're working with the moms and pops of your community. So I'm curious what each of these identities mean for you in your community. How have these identities impacted you and your clients? How have they helped you grow your own business?
Well, I think, these 3 pillars. I couldn't agree more with how important they are. And that's one of the things I love about the Bill Good marketing system is that we're going to spend the bulk of today's talk about the communication things I'm doing within our business, but it's also about the little details that Bill and his team have thought through. I mean, down to the point of where, like, if you're coming into our office, we have a welcome sign. I mean, that sounds like big deal. Welcome, Bill and Matt to our office. We've had people who walk in and like, can I please have a copy of that? I mean, it's little things like that that just matter. It's the office setup, and Bill even has walked us through about how the things we should have on our walls. I mean, it's really, there's so much detail in all this. There's something that Bill developed years ago, and that, yeah, I know you're currently in the process, Matt, of working on now of even doing another upgraded version of what's called the 110% gorilla chart. And that 110% gorilla chart is really our roadmap for scaling up in our business. I think when I started with Bill, I think we may have had 25 million under management. We're now at 250. I want to take it to 500, and who knows from there. And clearly that's one of the things I like about the system is that Bill can meet, his system can meet you wherever you are in your business, whether you're 1 or 2 years in, whether you're been in for 20 years, whether you're, 100 million under management or 1 billion or more, because he's coached thousands of advisors through the years and has that experience. So back to what you were saying, I know we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail with these other points throughout the call, but they're always good reminders of what we should be doing. The expert financial advisor, I've got to be the one who takes charge. I got to keep educating myself. I got to keep expanding my knowledge. You've got to be an expert in this field. The trustworthy, caring, well mannered individual. We're going to really talk about that in a little bit. What we're doing through the letters, as well as the good citizen. So, these things do matter, and they're everything in terms of staying in this profession for the long haul.
Excellent. So let's dive into that. What we're going to do the rest of this call is we're using these three pillars, always keeping them in the back of our minds. We're going to talk about the communications that Joe sends out in each of these specific areas and how they help him build up that expert financial advisor identity, how they brand Joe as a trustworthy, caring, well-mannered individual, how they demonstrate Joe's citizenship and his role in the community. So let's get into that now. Let's start off with the expert advisor identity, Joe, because I know there's a lot of things that you're sending out here that help with that. And let's go through each of these one by one. I don't want to direct you too much here, but talk to us about some of the communications that you send out that help establish that expertise in the minds of your clients and prospects.
Matt, I'm going to start first with what doesn't work. And I
Okay.
learned that the hard way. And let's go back to 2008. And that was an extremely difficult year for anybody in our industry. What was going on with, it seemed like the whole world was just blowing up. Banks were closing, financial markets were tanking. And let's talk about what I didn't do. What I didn't do in 2008 versus what I'm doing now, I wasn't sending out the hand holding letters. I wasn't sending out the market updates that I do now. My phone was ringing a lot. People panicking and people worrying, should we just get totally out? Should we give up? Is this the end of the times? Et cetera. So fast forward to 2020 is a good example, especially in March of 2020. The pandemic, the virus that we didn't know anything about, all of a sudden became a household word, and all around the world, it was a scary thing. We didn't know what was going on. Markets were selling off in a big way with the start of COVID. Businesses were shutting down. Everybody was going to their houses. We managed, Matt, and you were a big part of this because you were the lead writer for so many of these hand-holding pieces. And where I talk about we're at a minimum going to mail these things monthly. Well, during a pandemic, we were mailing these things weekly because that was the beauty of the Bill Good marketing system, is that when we are going through really tough markets are selling off, we see from your team, Matt, you guys are always producing more and more for us to send out in terms of hand-holding messages. Now, let me get the compliance part of this out of the way for everybody. Of course, all of these letters have to be compliance approved. Bill Good Marketing works directly, I know, with my broker dealer in getting a lot of the letters approved. However, not all of those, and sometimes we want to put our tweaks into the letters, and sometimes we want to make a little bit our own. What I'm with a good broker dealer, LPL usually will approve our letters within 24 to 48 hours. So we were able in that 2020 campaign to get those letters out really, really fast. And so that in the difference in 2008 and 2020 and even 2022 was a bad year because we were blasting these letters out all of the time. Here's what happened. Our phones quit ringing. We weren't getting the calls and people were panicking. As a matter of fact, in 2020, I would say we were very, very proactive. I mean, making as many calls as we could in one day just to get in touch with all of our clients. And the calls went something like this. You know, I'd call, "Hey, Matt, this is Joe. How are you? Just wanted to see if you're holding up okay, see if you have any questions. Joe, I just read your letter. I'm good." That's the typical, almost 9 out of 10 responses are, "I read your letter, I'm good." I call to this day, I still do reviews, you know, and whether it's on the phone or whether it's a face to face review or Zoom in today's world. And I'll start going into, and half the time the clients are going, "I'm good, I read your letter."
Right.
And so it's really taken a lot off of my plate. And it's also, you know, it's hard as nobody enjoys a bear market. I actually don't dread the bear markets as much as I used to, knowing that Bill Good Marketing is going to be very proactive and have those hand holding and market letters ready for us to go out, you know, as soon as possible.
That's great. I love that, Joe. You know, we've thrown some terminology out. You know, the use of the word hand holding and so on. And Bill, I was hoping you could break this down a little bit and provide some upper level context to what Joe is telling us. Um, because you know it's not enough just to send something that you know mentions, oh, the markets fell, you know, by 900 points yesterday. It's not enough to just send out a letter that goes, well, you know, in the previous quarter, you know, the US currency, you know, did this and commodities fell by this while the Dow that's not enough. That doesn't that shows that you can regurgitate facts, but it doesn't establish your expertise. So, Bill, talk to us about with these types of communications that Joe is sending, what makes them work and why do they establish that expertise?
All right. Several things make them work. Number one, and I have to tell you guys who are listening to this that this chap in the middle panel here on our webinar, Matthew Bailey, is the head writer, and he writes material that is far better than anything you'll ever see coming out of your broker dealer, whoever they are. All right. Now, the hand holding letters are fact based. The research on them is considerable. And one of the reasons that we're able to get these two compliance is they're sourced correctly. So it's not like us giving an opinion. Here's what a recognized authority has to say. But the framework of these letters is because of your relationship with us, we are keeping an eye out on your portfolio. If you have any questions at all, please give us a call. And they seem to let people know that you are on top of it. All right. Now, when there's bad news, the principle is when there's bad news, your clients need to hear from you tomorrow. And we do our very, very best to get that done. And as a matter of fact, I think Matthew, on the letter that you're showing on screen here, which is probably the Fed cutting rates letter,
That's right.
you had that out the same day that they made the announcement. Am I right on that?
Yeah, it was written the same day and we came out with it the next morning.
Okay.
So yeah, less than a 24-hour turnaround.
Right. So what can I tell you? And it made sense to people. They read it. And when Joe called them, they'll say, I read your letter. I'm good. I'm good. They're not good. I'm good.
And Bill,
So
if I could ask you one thing with that is, you know, one thing that goes on with the letters, we're talking about physical handheld letters for these. We'll get into email communications in a little while, but it may be important the big difference. Why do you still recommend that we send out the physical letters? And I mean, I know because it's been extremely successful and they're read when you send them out that way.
Right. All right. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, the shelf life of an email is what, 15 minutes? And second, the open rate is at best maybe 30%. We want an open rate of 99%. We want your clients to get the message. And how do we do that? They get a very well-designed letter. It's well written. It's the correct font. It's the correct font size. It goes in an envelope. The envelope is stamped. And that brands your letters against the junk mail that your firm sends out. They know which one comes from you, and they open it. And this is the most interesting thing at all. They don't just read it. The husband or the wife will pass it to the other. They'll send it to Aunt Martha. One of my clients has got a little lady in a extended care facility, and she puts them on the bulletin board. Can you do that with an email? Probably not. So we know that if we can get branded material into your client's hands physically, it makes an impact that emails never will. At least not yet.
And Matt, can I add one thing too? And this is one of the things you get with the Bill Good marketing system is every Tuesday, I believe, it's the eGorilla newsletter that comes from your operation, and that is worth its weight in gold alone because you know you're constantly seeing what's new letters are coming out. But one of the things we learned from just an eGorilla that we were struggling with these letters because you know we want to get them out, and we have a lot of clients, and you know we're printing a lot of letters. There's a lot of folding, stuffing, et cetera. And that project used to take us almost 2 full days to get those letters out. One of the things I learned from an e-gorilla is that Bill is always staying on top of and his team about any new technology or equipment that's out there. And from one of those e-gorillas, we learned of an equipment from a company called Quadient that we lease a product from them, and it literally takes our letters, it folds them, puts them in the envelope, seals the envelope. We have that process down now to 2 hours. So when you have a hand holding letter, by having the right equipment, we have to print the letters, of course, but it does the rest of the work for us. So we went from a 2 day project to 2 hours. So we're now able to get these handheld letters out, you know, immediately, almost. Sometimes
It makes a difference, Joe. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But this is not to say you shouldn't use email. There are cases to use email, and I know you're going to talk about it.
We're talking about too.
Yeah, and let's talk about that next. But really quick, before we get into that, I think there's one other point that we really need to emphasize here. We've used the term handholding, but these kinds of communications that you want to send out to your clients and prospects, it's not just about when something bad happens. I think one of the single best things an advisor can do is be the person who translates the headlines into plain English that everyone can understand very, very quickly and easily, and it sticks. Because what happens with people, whether they're very sophisticated investors or people who just check their accounts once a year, is they see all the time they're bombarded with scary sounding headlines or confusing headlines or contradictory headlines. Sometimes they may read it and understand it. Sometimes they may read it and not understand it. Sometimes they may not read it at all. They only glance at it and it stays in their mind, but they didn't actually have the time to read the article or watch the video or listen to the podcast or what have you. And when an advisor is proactively, like Joe was talking about in 2020 and 2022, when an advisor proactively is reaching out to explain the headlines, well, interest rates just got cut. What does that actually mean? How do they get cut? What is that? Why does that matter? You heard that tax cuts may expire next year. Let's actually talk about what that means, and so on and so forth. What happens is clients and prospects, they know whatever headline they see. I may not know what this means, but I know Joe does. And I know he'll tell me as soon as I need to know it. And that is what builds that confidence that my advisor is a real expert. They've got their hand on the wheel, they've got things under control. So that proactivity and that translating the headlines, whether you use our material, somebody else's material, or you write it your own, if you have that kind of mentality, it's going to go so far to building up that expert advisor identity that we've been talking about. Now, let's talk about email really quick, because I know there's a specific email campaign you wanted to share with us, Joe, that's really actually boosted your own open rates above 30%. And that's what we call the questions you were afraid to ask campaign. So why don't you talk to us a bit about this one?
Matt, one of the things we do, we do send out a weekly email, and for years that we've been doing it, it's a lot of it does come directly from LPL, where we would just be a market summary, just a brief summary of what's going on, and those the we would have a pretty decent open rate with those. But then we said, you know what, we gotta let's mix this up. Let's start adding some of the Bill Good marketing material into our weekly emails. And we started with you wrote a whole series on questions you were afraid to ask, but something like that. But it had to do, it's down to the basic. What is a stock? What is a bond? And you've done a whole series, and they're fantastic. And so we started running that series, and our open, because we can track, we can see how many people open it, and it went through the roof in terms of people. And actually, what was happening from those letters, we would hear some clients would even email us how much they enjoyed it, or when I'm talking to them on the phone, or I've always been afraid to ask what is a bond. I know you've told me before, but I never really understood what it really was. And those are the things that really matter. So that's been a big part of our what I think we've had a tremendous success in, and we've seen our open rate and our emails just go up and up. And I do think that's a big reason behind it, that this is the content they really care about. Because, in reality, you can pretty much get what happened in the market last week, or that's pretty much readily available on any, you can just Google CNBC and find a lot of that kind of stuff. But this is stuff that really matters to them. It's real life stuff.
Let me just pitch in on one little thing here. In the 90s, there was a whole series of surveys done by I forget the name of it, but it's the predecessor for FINRA. Mm-hmm. And every year they ask a question about what is the most useful thing your financial advisor can provide. And the answer was always education that makes me more knowledgeable. That's one of the things that they need from their advisor. And it's one of the things that we have made a point over many years of helping you provide. So that questions that you were afraid to ask that Matt's been writing are a perfect example that we are not overestimating the literacy of your clients. If they don't know what a bond is, we want to tell them.
Yeah, just to give one other quick example from that series that I think we got a lot of good feedback from, and then we'll move on. But to Joe's point, one of the letters in that series, or one of the emails in that series, is what's the different? Why is the Dow valued one way and the S&P another way? In other words, why is the Dow at 40,000 and the S&P's at 2,500 or whatever? What's the deal between those two vastly different numbers, and actually breaking down what does it actually mean when we say the Dow is at this point or the S&P rose by this much. Most people don't know that. They know that up is good and down is bad, but not much more than that, because they're not thinking about it on a daily basis. And getting that kind of answer to a question that almost everyone has, but they don't want to ask it because they're afraid of looking foolish or ignorant, or they don't want to, they don't even know who they should ask. That goes such a long way, again, to establishing that expert advisor identity, because you don't always need to sound technical. You don't need to sound like you're a Harvard grad in order to demonstrate your expertise. You just need to demonstrate that you know what it is they're thinking about, what it is they're feeling. You can answer their questions, why it matters, and you can do it proactively. That's all it takes. Okay, that's awesome. Let's move on to the next pillar, which is the trustworthy, caring individual identity. And Joe, you're sending out so much good stuff on this. You can see on the screen here birthday letters, etiquette letters, holiday pieces. Uh, Joe writes his own articles we're going to get to in a minute. We're going to go through each of these one by one, but let's start with holidays because this is a very neglected area for most advisors, Joe. But I know it's one you've found a lot of success in. So talk to us about the holiday communications you're sending out.
Well, the holiday communications, and if it's a holiday, there is a letter, and there are multiple letters, that go around each of those holidays, and we try to be very proactive with just about, especially the major holidays of the year, and they're just good stories, clearly we're going to usually, we try to do things sometimes around Memorial Day and Fourth of July and Veterans Day and and Thanksgiving and Christmas. They're all big part of everybody's lives. But going back to Christmas, that's a good example because I think about one client who loved our Christmas letters so much. He called me a few days after he did this. He says, "Hey, by the way, you may not know this, but I teach a Sunday school class at my church, and I used the letter was my lesson for Sundays, for my Sunday school lesson." So, uh, and and some really can be very touching and heartfelt the way they are read, and so they're very good, and we will continue to make that a part of our practice.
And so, Bill, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit? Because whether it's whether it's Christmas or anything, I think a lot of advisors they may send a card for a holiday. They may shoot an email saying, Happy Thanksgiving or what have you. They'll do a greeting, but what we're talking about with communications on these holidays is altogether different. So tell us about how this fits in with what you have discovered and researched with this trustworthy individual identity.
All right. I think the first holiday letter we did was Christmas of maybe 2000 or 1991, something like that. And I came across a story. Jake's Oranges is the name of the story.
Mhm.
And I thought, what a great story. And I made it into a letter. And it was an unbelievable hit because what it captured was not this religion or that sect or this, but it captured the spirit of the season.
Mhm.
So our Christmas letters are mostly seasonal, the spirit of the season. Now we do have some seasonal letters for people of the Jewish faith and other faiths, but mostly what people really respond to is the spirit of the season. Now, Memorial Day. That's another time when it just seizes people. Matthew, you wrote one of my very favorite letters, which is the story of the dentist, the warrior dentist.
Benjamin Solomon, yeah.
And I can't read that I don't tear up. And I've read that many times. And what these letters do, they undercut the financial advisor relationship and go to the personal relationship. The foundation of this business was, is, and will be an unbelievable personal relationship.
Yeah, I think what we're really talking about here, and why this helps with the caring individual aspect, especially, is when you send out communications on holidays that go beyond just a greeting, but go into a story that illustrates the spirit of the season or what a holiday means to you personally. It shows people that you are more than just someone dealing with numbers and markets. You're someone who has the same values that they do. You're someone who wants to inspire and motivate and encourage clients, not just be, the number cruncher. It shows that you care about them as people, not just accounts. We'll get into that more in just a second with the birthday and etiquette letters. And there's a real cumulative effect when you send out communications on all these holidays and you do it year after year and people know to expect it and they share it and they save it. And it really helps them create that personal relationship with you, the advisor. And the more that relationship is personal, the more trust there is, the more you have that trusted advisor status. So we love holiday communications here at Bill Good Marketing. Let's talk about the birthday letters you're sending out, Joe, because that is also a huge part of building up this trustworthy, caring individual identity.
We send those out every week because, their birthdays are constant throughout the entire year. And what I like about the birthday letters, whatever age my client's turning, whether it's 62 or age 70 or 50, the letter is designed for that birthday, which means you're not really having to go search through all this and try to find, okay, they just are a year older. Let's make sure we didn't send the same one we did last year. So every year, they get a birthday letter from our office, and the birthday letters are there. A lot of them are very funny, the way they're, and I mean, some of them are to the point they're a little, you say that's kind of corny. Are they going to like that or not? I can remember when we first got on the system of reading through, and because I still personally sign all the birthday letters, um, and I remember reading some that I'm like, are they going to like this or not? And I said, no, I'm going to trust Bill's done this. He's coached these advisors. I said, I gotta trust it. I'm going to send these letters out anyway, and they have been a grand slam. And we continue to do this. I can't imagine a day where we're not sending out birthday letters and anniversary letters too, for that matter.
Absolutely.
There's letters for that as well.
Bill,
Let me jump in a little bit
yeah,
on
go
this.
ahead.
There's very when we launched the very first copy of the Gorilla software, I only included one birthday letter. And I did it as an afterthought. And that birthday letter went, I'd like to hire the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to sing happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Joe, happy birthday to you. But since I couldn't, I thought I would just write and say, I hope January 17th is a very special day. And we sent that out. And within a month or two, I got screams of anguish from our little clientele. Bill, whoever gets that letter second, they're calling me up and breaking my chops. I got to have a separate letter for the spouses. So we every year for a long time we would add 2 new birthday letters a year, and because we learned they don't like to get the same birthday letter. These letters are so powerful and so memorable that they remember. So there you go. And that's why, Joe, you send a male and a female birthday letter.
That's right.
Absolutely. Now, I have a question for both of you, and it goes for birthday letters and for etiquette letters. And we'll get into this in just a second here. But why send a letter as part of your communication strategy as opposed to just sending a card? Anyone can go to the store and they can pick out a card for someone's birthday or someone's anniversary or any kind of event for their lives. But we don't recommend that. And there's a very
No,
specific reason. Why is that, Bill?
it's because the birthday letters get much better response. They love these. And they may get 10 or 15 birthday cards, but they only get one birthday letter. And they can sort of imagine Joe sitting there typing out this letter and sending it to them. It's much more personal than a Hallmark card.
And much more memorable as well.
Right. Yeah.
For sure. So that brings us to the etiquette letters. I think, I know I've said this a lot, but I think etiquette letters are such a huge differentiator between advisors who send them versus advisors who don't, in having this trustworthy identity and that trusted advisor relationship. So you can see on the screen some of the different kinds of etiquette letters that Joe is sending out. But talk to us about some of these, Joe. I know, there's a few in particular that you've sent out over the years that, have resonated particularly with your clients. What's the story with etiquette letters in your mind?
Well, first of all, that's one thing I love about your system is you have so many etiquette letters to choose from. I mean, you're as specific as if you got a letter if somebody's dog died. I mean, that's how good this library is of pulling these great etiquette letters. One of the things that I think is really working for us, we have a role in our office called the CRM specialist.
Mm.
And and what his role is in our office is to, number one is, after I meet or talk to clients, it's my job, legally we have to do notes and for any meetings we do, and record everything, for anytime we talk or meet with the client. But my CRM specialist is really good about reading through my notes, because he cleans it up, emails it back to me. We make sure the notes, is in good order before you know, we truly upload into our folders with LPL, as well as so we've got that captured. But back to what he is doing in our office is that he's looking at things if I miss it. So let's say that Matt just told me about his dog dying, and I may be putting that in the note. Well, I may have forgotten to say, hey, and he'll come back in, hey, by the way, I read in your note that you mentioned his dog died. What was his dog's name? Yeah, also, okay, I think it was Teddy. So he said, I'll get the letter together and we'll send that out. And that's just an example of many things. It could be, a grandchild won an award. It could be, your son or daughter just graduated from high school or college. There's just so many. It's almost like, I don't know what you guys have not thought. I think you've thought of everything in terms of, there's an etiquette letter for just about everything you want. And that's the good part of when you're doing your client notes and having the CRM specialist being that second set of eyes to make sure. And they will go get the letter together. I'll approve it, and if it looks good, we'll send it out. And if it's something that we have to get approved, most of these letters are approved already. But if not, we're always following our due diligence with our broker dealer before we send out anything.
Yeah, and I love how you guys sort of have your your radar on and your antenna dish up, so to speak, looking for these opportunities. Because anytime a client or a prospect, and this I think is especially powerful with prospects, because they will not have gotten this from their current advisor.
Mhm.
If you are on the lookout for anything that happens that is important or momentous or generates emotion in the minds of your clients and prospects, something good happens to them, send out an etiquette letter on it. Something sad happens, they have a death in the family or they're sick, send out a get well letter or a condolence letter. If it's an important milestone for them, send out an anniversary letter or a congratulations letter. If they've done something nice for you, or even just said something nice about you, send them a thank you letter. The more you do this, the more you refuse to let opportunities to insert yourself into their personal lives. The more you refuse to let those opportunities go by, the more they will think of you as not just someone, not just a hired gun, but someone who they couldn't imagine going through life without, because you're there for them when they need you. And that is the trusted advisor relationship in a nutshell. But would you agree with that, Bill? Is there anything I'm missing here with etiquette letters?
Just here's the fact. Many of the etiquette letters are written to acknowledge or recognize the events that people remember.
Right.
And so a death, an illness, a new job, a better job, a new home, all of these things are events. And when they get that letter from you, that's a way of saying, we listen. We pay attention to you. And what kind of person would do that? Well, how about a trustworthy, caring, well-mannered individual?
Absolutely. I love that. Now, there's another type of communication that you're doing, Joe, and this one is very specific to you, and I love it. You've been very kind in, talking about the content that we provide for you, but you are an excellent writer yourself. And I know that the writings that you do for your community are a huge part of your communication strategy and a huge part of this trusted advisor relationship we're talking about. So talk to us about the articles you write for your newspaper that you also cross post to your blog.
Well, Matt, this is something, I know I may be one of the very few advisors in the country who has a degree in journalism, but I minored in business. But some things have a way of putting you on your right path, and and I kind of fell into this. somewhat by accident. And it was because there was a person in my local paper who I love dearly, actually was a neighbor of mine, grew up literally playing in her front yard uh, uh, during my childhood. And she occupied that spot in our newspaper for at least, I believe it was at least 25 years. And then she died unexpectedly back in 2012. And I just decided to write a tribute column to her. And the next thing you know, I took it to the paper, and they liked it. They published it, and then one of the other advisors in my office, Tyler, encouraged me to talk to the paper, send some more in, and I did. And next thing you know, I've been occupying that spot since 2012, and I do not I have never published one column um, that has to do with my business or has to do with anything financial.
Mm.
Every column is about life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the happy times, the sad times, the rewards, the tragedies, you name it. It's there, and I just and most of it is really yeah, it's I know my audience. It's a local, it's a local column. So much of it is. I mean, this I'm looking what you're on, what you threw up. This was the column that just was published last Saturday. Strike three. Well, in my community, this was a legendary baseball field that every kid who grew up here played on that field at some point, and they're tearing it down to build pickleball courts. So I had to write almost a love letter to that old baseball field, and oh my personal text messages and phone calls have blown up since that column was released last week. People, I played on that ball field. I'm mad about them tearing it down, et cetera. But it was designed with a lot of humor in it, and so I didn't know what I really started out doing this for fun. It really turned into therapy in so many ways because writing can be very therapeutic, and I do enjoy doing this. But what I didn't really set out to do with this, like I said, it really started as something fun and really turned into something I realize is very therapeutic and healthy to do for me. But I didn't realize how much business it would bring me,
Mm.
uh, how much it just, like Bill was saying, that part of being the trusted advisor, it really filled in a big part of that. Because so many of my clients get the local paper and read this, and it's so funny. I'll be calling them to talk about what's going on in the markets or their accounts, or has anything changed in their financial plan, and half the time they just want to talk about the column I wrote. And I mean, that's life, and that's what it's all about.
That's so cool, Joe. I think that's I loved reading a lot of the articles I saw in your blog
Well,
as I was
thank you.
preparing for this, and I think it's so cool that so many people are reading it and reaching out to you, and it's not just benefiting you professionally but personally as well. That really makes me feel happy for you.
Thank you.
Uh, and even if you're not writing for your local paper, you can take this idea, have your own blog. If you don't like writing, then record yourself talking, whether it's on a video or a podcast or what have you. But give people a sense of the inner you. What do you think about things going on? What do you care about? What makes you laugh? What makes you smile? What do you love? The more you do that, the more people see it. The more you're not just a guy in a suit in an office, that they only think about when it has to do with their accounts. You are someone that again is that they want to know, they want to associate with, they want to have a relationship with, and that's such a powerful thing. We are almost out of time, but I wanted to cover two other quick things. One is the good citizen identity. I think we're just going to go through this really briefly because we've sort of talked about it already. There are a number of holidays you can send out communications for that make a big difference with your good citizen brand. Bill mentioned Memorial Day, which is a really powerful holiday. If you've ever been on one of our webinars, you've heard me say, do not let a Memorial Day slip by without acknowledging it somehow in your communication strategy. but President's Day, Independence Day, or Canada Day, if you were a Canadian advisor, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Remembrance Day, all these different types of holidays, when you send out communications on them, your thoughts, stories that inspire you, etc., it lets people know that you're a patriotic individual. You are an active member of your community. You share the same values that they do. And that's a powerful thing when it comes to your trusted advisor status. Now, the last thing I want to make sure we talk about is, and I don't have a slide for it, but Joe, I know you are having a lot of success with a new area of your communication strategy that you just started working on with Bill. And I'm going to let you and Bill take the reins on this one and talk to us about it.
Let me define the campaign. I named it the Wilson campaign. What a weird name for a campaign, but it was named after a client of mine, Dick Wilson, who sometime in the 90s started sending our feel-good letters to people that he knew. He was very active socially. He was a member of the United Way. He played golf. He was active in Rotary. He supported a lot of charities. And he had built up a list of, at the start of this campaign, of 78 people that we would later name connections. Now, what is a connection? The definition of a connection, it is someone that you know. And you have to know, for this definition to apply, you have to know them well enough. So if you see them on the street, you say, "Hey, Joe, morning, Bill." That's the minimum relationship required for this campaign to work. So Dick was sending out these feel-good letters, and these feel-good letters never ask for anything. They did not solicit, and there actually is an unwritten law, except I wrote it because I discovered it. Thou shalt not solicit thy connections. So how do we communicate with them? Feel-good letters and educational letters. Now, the campaign that I got Joe started on has even a stranger name called the Blended Wilson campaign. What a weird name for a campaign. So what's blended? Well, the original Wilson letters campaign was only feel-good letters. And then I think about 2012, we added what I named the New York Wilson campaign. The reason I named it New York is I had people from that neck of the woods call up and say, Bill, we just can't send these sweet Wilson letters to our New York clients. And so I named it the New York Wilson campaign, and it is only educational materials. So Blended Wilson is some feel good and some educational, some hand holding, some trending now. And Joe, tell us what happened when you sent out your first intro letter. Now, just one other thing here. When you start a new campaign of some kind, it's always good practice to tell people what you're going to do. So the Wilson intro letter explains that he's going to be sending these people that he knows some material that he thinks they'll like. So take it from there, Joe.
Well, I've been hearing about the Wilson campaign for a long time. It actually took Bill to really, to get me going with this thing. After all these years, I've been working with him. So we just have recently launched the Wilson campaign, and we worked very hard on getting that first letter just right to mail out. And we have since mailed only we've only mailed 2 letters. So we're only 2 letters into this. The first letter had someone, it had nothing to do with business, know that. But they called our office, scheduled an appointment after the first letter. I have already met with them 2 times. I knew from after the first meeting, we were going to at least be looking at $1 million, $1 million account. Bill doesn't even know this because I've met with him since I've talked to him last, and I found another million to $1.5 million out of this. So the first letter is already going to be, and that's going to be more than likely in a fee-based type arrangement account. So that's a heck of a start. What surprised me, and I'll be totally transparent here. We got to the point we had the first letter ready to roll. I came up with about 70 of my friends, people I know very well who are not clients, And I was we were at the point I was excited about sending it out, and all of a sudden it's the day of. And I had butterflies. I was nervous. I'm like, I hope, oh me, is this going to go well? Are they going to look at me and, no, turn away when I walk, when I walk in a room for getting this? Is it going to, I have been absolutely shocked. Again, that's one thing that Bill and his team are really good about doing because he's done it with countless advisors and he can see around corners I can't see around quite yet. I just knew that I had to commit to trusting the process. What I wasn't prepared for were the phone calls that were coming in the office. I am so glad that Joe's added me to this his list. We can't wait to get these letters. These are not our clients. I have received emails, people telling me how glad they are to be on it. One email, one text, personal text I got from a client is, I thought it was so funny. Well, I'm trying to pull it up on my phone now, so it's not coming up, but here we go. He said, hey, Joe, I just walked, this is an adult child, and he said, I just walked in my parents' house and read your private mailing list letter and was curious if you would mind adding me to your list. So we've already had people to ask, can we be added to the list? I haven't even mailed them anything. This was just the introductory letter. And I just in this and today, keep in mind these are not clients, so they have my personal cell phone, but I've already received in the last 18 hours two text messages from two of my friends who basically, one just wrote me last night, said, um, good evening, my friend. Just wanted to tell you upon our return from a long vacation, we were lucky enough to receive and immensely enjoy the blessings of three of your writings from the Book of Joe. He said two of your letters because he has been gone out of town since we mailed these two, and he of course read the one that is published in my local newspaper. He said, colorful and inspiring words as always. Thank you. So these are the kind of things that have just I'm in shock. I did not. I'll be upfront, but I've told Bill I did not expect this to happen, and it has happened. And I can't wait to see 5 years from now after we've been running this campaign. And by the way, we will be doing this monthly. And as I run into other people around town, cross paths with my friends who aren't on the list, I am going to add them to the list. So think about this: the first letter, well, let's just say $1 million account, and a fee-based account, pretty much is going to cover my cost for mailing these Wilson campaigns for quite a while,
For a
That is
long
so
time.
good.
long time. And Bill, you probably don't want to hear this because I don't want you to raise my dues, but to me, I've always looked at the Bill Good marketing system as free because right off the bat, when I first got on the system, within the first 3 or 4 months, one letter paid for my first original subscription. And I can say every year, the letters doing this marketing, I can't tell you, I can't even put a dollar value on how important this has been to us. And that's what I would tell anybody ever considering the system. Sign up. It's a no-brainer. We can't say guarantee in our world, but I'm very highly confident you will make your money back
Thank you,
and
Joe.
more, a lot more.
Thank you. We really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to us. Well, we are about out of time. I know we've thrown a lot of information at you. So I want to make sure you get an access to the goodies that we promised at the beginning of this call. Again, just as a reminder, in this goodie bag, you'll find an entire guidebook on best practices for retaining clients and engaging with clients. And you'll also find one of the types of communications that we talked about today. That's our new interest rate cut letter that came out last week. I know, Joe, you've already sent it out or are about to send it out. So you're free to use this piece however you'd like. You can get both of these goodie bag items. All we ask is that you fill out a quick report card. It takes about 30 seconds or so, just letting us know how we did, what you learned from this, what you'd like to see from us in the future. And then as soon as you filled out that report card, that'll take you right to the goodie bag itself. And you can get to the report card by going to bgmtips.com/standout. note the which letters are capitalized there, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. Either one will take you to the report card, and from there to the goodie bag. So I think that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did, and I hope the big takeaway that you got is, by having a very specific communication strategy that has those three pillars in mind: the expert advisor, the trustworthy, caring, well-mannered individual, and the good citizen. If you have a communication strategy that brands you as those three things, that will establish the trusted advisor relationship that Bill was talking about. And the more you do that with the more people, the more success you will have with your business. Bill, Joe, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out today?
Thank you.
That questionnaire has a last question where if you have questions for me or Joe, you can fill that out and we will personally get back to you and answer your questions.
Absolutely. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for the time today. Joe, we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this call with us. We had a blast doing it with you. Bill, thank you as always for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and your experience with us. And for all of you at home watching, thank you for giving us some of your time today. We really appreciated you joining us on this webinar, and we'll see you for the next one. So from all of us here at Bill Good Marketing, as always, thank you very much.